Is it possible for you to kind of map out a future for yourself, or are you taking it like as it comes at the moment?
I gotta always have a plan, you know what I'm saying, for the future, but I like to take it day by day because nobody's promised tomorrow.
Snoop Dogg came straight out the trenches, faced a murder case, and buried more loved ones than anyone should. Yet somehow he flipped all that pain into power and rose up as one of the most legendary names in hip-hop. Let's rewind the story and see how Calvin U.S. went from hustling on street corners to staring down a life sentence in a cold LA courtroom. From surviving the grind to standing on the edge, Calvin Cordozar Broadus Jr. made his mark like no other. Born on October 20th, 1971 at Long Beach Community Hospital in Long Beach, California, this man's story started rough. His biological pops, Vernell Varnado, a Vietnam War vet and mail carrier, walked out on the family just 3 months after Snoop came into the world and dipped off to Detroit. That hit hard, but the youngin' got his name from his stepdad, Calvin Cordozar Broadus Jr., after his mom tied the knot again. Sadly, that marriage didn't last long either, splitting up when Snoop was only around 4 years old. His mom, Beverly Lynn Tate, became the strength holding it all together. She worked multiple jobs non-stop to keep her boys fed and the lights on while raising them on the east side of Long Beach. Life was tough, but that struggle built the legend we know today. Back in the 70s and 80s, Snoop's hood was one of the roughest, most run-down spots in all of Long Beach. Streets were hot, factories were closing left and right, and good jobs were drying up fast. Then came the crack wave, and it hit the community like a bomb, tearing families apart and turning neighbors into enemies overnight. To help his family survive, young Snoop jumped into the grind early. He was out there hustling candy door to door.
As a kid, it was cool because it wasn't too much violence. It was, all my homeboys, we played football, basketball, we were in that sports or either going to school. But then as we got older, a lot of the homies started getting caught up and gangs started to form, and some of us started going to
slinging newspapers and bagging groceries at local stores just to bring in a few bucks. Even as a kid, he had that go-getter energy, the type he can't teach. His mom, a devout Baptist and choir singer at Golgotha Trinity Baptist Church, made sure her boys stayed close to music from the very start. She had him singing gospel in the church choir and tickling piano keys before he could even spell kindergarten. She schooled him on classic R&B and soul, the smooth sounds that would later mold his signature West Coast vibe. And that nickname Snoopy came straight from his mom. She thought he looked like the cartoon dog from Peanuts because he never missed an episode. Funny thing is, that cute little name didn't match the streets he grew up in, because once he hit 6th grade, Snoop wasn't just a choir boy anymore. He was putting in work out there. By the time Snoop hit high school, he was already tearing up the hallways with his rhymes. He'd start freestyling between classes, and crowds would pack in so deep that the principals thought a fight was breaking out. That's how electric his energy was. He had people stopping in their tracks just to listen. But Snoop wasn't just about the mic. He was a beast on the field, too. Playing receiver and defensive back, he had real scholarship potential. Coaches saw something special in him, and he still kept showing up to church every week, holding on to that spiritual side his mama taught him. But even with all that, the streets kept calling his name. The east side of Long Beach in the late 80s was chaos. Gangs running the blocks, cops harassing everyone, and drugs flooding every corner. Around 15 or 16, Snoop got put on with the Rollin' 20s neighborhood Crips. He's always said it wasn't some big dramatic initiation. When you grow up in Crip territory, your homies are already in it. Joining up wasn't about being tough, it was about survival, protection, and finding some kind of brotherhood where real opportunities were nearly impossible to find. Looking back, Snoop's been real about how things changed, how he and his boys went from innocent kids playing ball to young men caught up in the system.
Like I said, when we was making tapes in the back, me and my homeboys, Dre's little brother was my DJ at the time being, and he was always telling me, man, you need to rap for Dre. And I was like, I know I ain't ready for them yet. They had put Straight Outta Compton out, and I was like, I ain't even on their level yet. So we just went ahead and kept making.
By his late teens and early 20s, Snoop was fully caught up in the trap life. He was out there moving weight, hustling cocaine on the streets, chasing that fast money that looked sweet at first, but came with nothing but danger. Every day brought new drama, rival crews, undercover cops, and the constant threat of getting locked up or worse. From around 1989 to 1990, his name stayed hot on police radar. He kept getting hit with possession charges and intent to distribute cases one after another. In 1990, one of those busts finally caught up with him and landed him in Los Angeles County's Wayside Maximum Security Prison for about 6 long months. Sitting behind those walls gave him time to think, and when he came home, he realized the streets had already taken too many people he loved. That was his wake-up call. He made up his mind. He was done with the hustle and was ready to bet it all on rap. Music became his ticket out. Back in high school, he had already linked up with his step-cousin Warren G. and his day one brother Nathaniel Nate Dogg, another church kid with golden pipes who could sing his soul out. Together, they formed the group 213, representing their Long Beach area code, and started cooking up tracks that mixed smooth funk with gritty street flavor. They were creating what would later be known as that signature G-Funk sound, inspired by legends like George Clinton and early West Coast pioneers. And then came the game changer. In 1991, Warren G slid one of their demo tapes to Dr. Dre at a party, and Dre was instantly locked in. That moment opened the door to Snoop's first big blessing, jumping on Dre's track Deep Cover in 1992. From there, everything took off like wildfire. Before that moment, Snoop and his homies had been recording in the back of a small record shop, grinding with whatever they had. Dre's little brother kept saying, "Man, get that music to Dre," but Snoop held off, saying he wasn't ready yet, not until his flow was razor sharp and his sound untouchable. By 1993, Snoop Dogg was standing on the edge of superstardom. His debut album, Dogg Style, was set to shatter records as the fastest-selling rap debut ever. He was just 21, young, rich in talent, and ready to take over the rap world. But on August 25, 1993, everything flipped in an instant. Shots rang out near his LA apartment complex, and suddenly Snoop's freedom and his whole future were hanging by a thread.
When I first got out of jail, like in 89, the end of 89, I didn't want to go back to jail. I wanted to do something with myself. And I just, started becoming dedicated to it, being a student to it, started making tapes and, leaving all the other madness alone on the streets and being more dedicated to rap.
The incident left one man dead, and the case had Snoop facing a courtroom battle where the odds were stacked heavy against him from day one. It was a fight for his life, a case that could have ended his career before it truly began. The situation behind that shooting had been heating up all summer '93. Philip Woldemariam, a 20-year-old said to be connected with the buy-yourself hustlers, had serious tension with some of the people in Snoop's crew. The defense later claimed that Woldemariam and his boys had been tailing Snoop's Jeep multiple times, throwing out threats, flashing heat, and looking for trouble. Then came that night in August in the Palms area of West LA when it all boiled over. The tension, the threats, the buildup, it all exploded right there near Snoop's home, setting off one of the wildest moments in hip-hop history. Snoop was behind the wheel of his black Jeep Cherokee that day, with his bodyguard McKinley Lee riding shotgun and his homie Sean Abrams in the back seat. As they cruised through the neighborhood, they spotted Philip Woldemariam walking through a nearby park, and that's when everything went left. Words flew between the two sides, tensions exploded, and from inside the Jeep, Lee fired shots. Woldemariam got hit in the back and lower side as he tried to run, collapsing right there in the park. He didn't make it. When LAPD arrived, they found no gun on Woldemariam's body. That detail would become a major point in what came next. The prosecution came hard, trying to paint Snoop as a shot-calling Crip who ordered a hit out of revenge. They even pulled out his lyrics, using lines from Murder Was the Case to argue that it was more than just art, that it was proof of his mindset. But what the public didn't realize was this was the first time Snoop ever had real legal backup. Before fame hit, he was taking whatever plea deal came his way just because he couldn't afford to fight back. But this time, he had the means and the muscle to finally defend himself. Snoop's defense team came stacked with legal heavyweights. Leading the charge was Johnny L. Cochran Jr., the same powerhouse lawyer who had just helped O.J. Simpson walk free.
When I first got out of jail, like in 89, the end of 89, I didn't want to go back to jail. I wanted to do something with myself.
Rolling with him were David Kenner and Donald Ray, two more courtroom sharks ready to tear apart the prosecution's case. Their strategy? Self-defense, plain and simple. They argued that Philip Woldemariam and his crew had been harassing and threatening Snoop's camp for weeks before that tragic night. They made it clear this wasn't some cold-blooded hit, it was survival when things finally spun out of control. And say what you want about Suge Knight, but when it came to protecting his biggest artist, he didn't play small. He dropped nearly $10 million on Snoop's legal dream team to make sure every move was airtight. The trial itself turned into something the courts had never seen before. Snoop's lawyers brought out high-tech tactics for the time, including video reenactments of the shooting. They used those clips to walk the jury through every second of the scene, showing exactly how it all went down in real time. The jury started deliberating on February 20th, 1996, and the tension was sky high. For 4 straight days, they went back and forth, with people thinking the whole thing might end in a deadlock. But then, on February 21st, 1996, the verdict dropped and the courtroom exploded. Both Snoop Dogg and McKinley Lee were acquitted of all murder charges. The jury couldn't agree on the voluntary manslaughter count, but that didn't matter for long. The DA ended up dropping it completely. When jurors later spoke out, they said the self-defense story made sense, and they didn't buy how the cops or prosecutors had handled the investigation. It was a major win, but it came at a heavy cost. Snoop's legal tab was somewhere between $5 and $10 million, and the emotional weight hit even harder. He spent months on house arrest, living with constant death threats, and leaned on his weed habit just to stay grounded through the chaos. Snoop later opened up about those nights, how he'd pray before bed, terrified they might sentence him to death.
About a week ago, my mom's birthday was April 27th, and we went to her gravesite, and I was on Instagram Live, because I just wanted to share with people that I'm, keeping her spirit alive, and then I had that gospel music on, and them damn songs came on, and I started crying. I'm like, uh-oh. Mama working on me right now. She's trying to show my vulnerability in front of everybody to show that I miss her.
That fear turned into a spiritual awakening, a moment that changed how he saw everything. Through all that pain and pressure, Snoop learned to move different, to take each day as it comes, knowing that tomorrow ain't promised to nobody. After walking out of that courtroom a free man, Snoop made a real choice. He was done living reckless. He switched up his whole style, dropping the heavy gangsta image and coming through with a smoother, more positive vibe on his 1996 album, The Dogfather. It was a turning point, a man who had seen the edge and decided he didn't want to fall off it. He had made it through something most of his peers never did, but survival came with its own kind of pain. While Snoop was trying to elevate, the streets around him were still wild. He watched friends fall, bodies drop, and the game get darker by the day. The mid-90s hip-hop scene was spinning out of control, fueled by the brutal East Coast versus West Coast beef that had the entire culture split down the middle. The media couldn't get enough of it. They hyped every word, every diss track, every interview like it was a war broadcast. Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records were locked in an all-out battle, and rappers were firing shots on tracks and in front of cameras with no fear. Snoop's bond with Tupac Shakur started in late 1995, right after Pac walked free from prison and signed to Death Row. Instantly, there was mutual respect. Two West Coast giants, both molded by struggle, both born from the chaos of poverty and gang life. The connection was real, raw, powerful, and about to make history. In the studio, Snoop and Pac had unmatched chemistry, pure magic every time they hit the mic. Pac pushed Snoop to go harder, to dig deeper, and to spit with more fire during the All Eyes on Me sessions and the Death Row compilations.
I'm strong enough to cherish the moments that I had with her. So it went from tears of sadness to tears of joy to me and my brother conversing, and my kids was behind me. It turned into a beautiful day. But like those moments like that are moments I like to share with people, to show them that I'm normal, that I do have a moment where I do cry and I do feel like you feel, and I'm not always happy and I'm not always up.
Together, they dropped straight classics, two of America's Most Wanted, Got My Mind Made Up, and more. Snoop always spoke highly of Pac, seeing him not just as a peer, but as a legend, maybe even bigger than himself. In fact, it was Snoop the one who pushed to get Pac signed to Death Row in the first place. But by the middle of '96, things started changing fast. Pac's energy had gotten unpredictable. He was running hot, calling shots, and demanding everyone on the label pick a side in the growing East Coast versus West Coast beef. Meanwhile, Snoop, fresh off surviving his own murder trial, was trying to move different. He didn't want to drown in more drama when he was finally finding peace. Pac's paranoia had roots. After he got shot outside Quad Studios in New York back in '94, he started pointing fingers at people who actually had nothing to do with the setup. Being part of Death Row Records only made it worse. That label was already carrying a heavy reputation, and Suge Knight's aggressive attitude turned up the tension even higher. Instead of cooling things down, it made the whole feud explode even more. Then came September 7th, 1996, the night that everything changed. After the Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas, Pac was hit multiple times in a drive-by. Snoop wasn't there, he had stayed back in LA, but when the news broke, he was crushed. Pac fought for 6 long days before passing away on September 13, 1996, at just 25 years old. The moment he heard, he rushed straight to Vegas, heartbroken to see his brother in the ICU, a moment that would haunt him for life. Snoop's talked about the pain of seeing his brother Pac in that hospital room, swollen, hooked up to tubes, motionless. He said the moment he realized Pac wasn't going to pull through, his heart broke in ways words can't describe. That guilt hit deep, that heavy survivor's guilt that never really goes away. Then just 6 months later, on March 9, 1997, tragedy struck again. Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G., was gunned down in Los Angeles right after leaving a Vibe magazine party. The hit went down almost exactly like Pac's, shots fired from a passing car, and to this day, it's still unsolved. Even though Snoop wasn't directly tied to the situation, the loss hit him hard. 2 of hip-hop's biggest icons, both gone within half a year. The beef had gone way past music. What started as a rap rivalry had turned into bloodshed.
That anxiety record's so hard.
Right, because we go through that, right?
Yeah.
It feels like we all go through that, but it's starting to become cool to talk about. You know, if you said it maybe 5 years ago, people look at you like you crazy. And nobody wants the stigma of, I'm crazy. No, I just want some help.
Snoop later said losing Biggie broke the spirit of hip-hop. It was like watching the soul of the culture get ripped away. And in the middle of all this madness, Death Row Records, the empire that once ruled the West, was falling apart under Suge Knight's heavy hand. After Pac's death, the label spiraled fast. Money disappeared, artists weren't getting paid, and the fear tactics behind the scenes got out of control. Snoop found himself in the middle of it, clashing with Suge over creative control, business drama, and straight up fearing for his safety. It got so tense that even success didn't feel safe anymore. Still, through all the chaos, Snoop has always given Suge his credit, saying that despite everything, Suge helped shape his early hustle, drilled that winner's mindset into him, and pushed him to chase greatness like his life depended on it. By the late 90s, Snoop had reached a breaking point. The streets, the labels, the losses, it was too much chaos, and he knew he had to take back control of his life. So he walked away from Death Row Records, cutting ties with the madness and stepping into a new chapter that would redefine his career forever. He linked up with Master P's No Limit Records, and that move flipped everything around. Snoop reinvented himself, still smooth, still street, but now wiser and in full control of his business. He dropped hit after hit, proving that no label, no beef, and no past could hold him down. Over time, Snoop evolved from a gangster rapper into a global icon, a man who could be on a track with legends one day and hosting family TV the next. He became the face of longevity in hip-hop, always adapting, always staying relevant, and always staying real. From surviving murder trials to standing tall in Hollywood, Snoop Dogg showed the world what it means to rise above everything meant to break you. And that's the story. From Long Beach blocks to worldwide fame, the Dogfather went from the struggle to superstardom, all while keeping it 100 every step of the way. If you felt this story, make sure you subscribe, like, share, and drop a comment below. Let us know what part of Snoop's journey hits you the hardest, because this man's legacy is still growing, and we're just getting started.